It was one of those quiet, ordinary evenings, nothing unusual, nothing out of place. The house had fallen into its usual rhythm, the hum of the fridge, the soft ticking of the clock on the wall, and the faint glow from the living room lamp. I had just finished cleaning up the kitchen after dinner, wiping the last bit of spaghetti sauce from the counter, when I heard something strange. Not loud, not alarming, but enough to make me pause. It was coming from down the hall, from behind a slightly cracked door. Now, let me just say this up front, families are complicated. And blended families? Even more so. My stepson, Jamie, had only been living with us for about a year. He was 17, smart but quiet, a bit closed off since his dad and I got married. He mostly kept to himself, staying in his room, always with headphones on, eyes glued to his screen. We weren't exactly close, but we were slowly getting there, or so I thought. So that night, when I walked past his door and noticed it wasn't fully closed, something made me glance inside. I wasn't trying to snoop, but sometimes, as a parent, or in my case, a step-parent, you get that gut feeling. And when I saw him, sitting there on the edge of his bed, flustered and panicked when he noticed me, I knew I had walked in on something personal. It was awkward, beyond awkward, but it wasn't what you're probably thinking. He jumped up, clearly embarrassed, mumbling something about locking the door next time. I was stunned for a second, frozen there, trying to decide whether to pretend I hadn't seen anything or address it. But here's where it gets complicated. I didn't see someone doing something wrong. I saw a teenager, my stepson, confused, alone, and clearly dealing with something he didn't know how to handle. And maybe that's the part people won't understand. Or maybe they will. Because what happened next wasn't about judgment or shame. It wasn't about crossing boundaries. It was about connection, understanding, and the uncomfortable truths that sometimes come with being part of a family. I didn't scold him. I didn't slam the door and walk away. I asked him if he was okay. He was startled, nervous, but something in my voice must have told him I wasn't angry. That I was curious. Concerned. That I actually wanted to listen. And he opened up, slowly. Stumbling through his words, trying to explain what he was going through. It wasn't just a private moment I had walked in on, it was a window into something much deeper. Something he'd been struggling with for a while. He told me things that night I'm not even sure he's told his own father. About feeling confused. About how isolated he felt in this house, in this new life. And about needing someone to talk to, someone who wouldn't judge, wouldn't lecture, wouldn't make him feel ashamed. And that's when I realized something, I wasn't just his stepmother by title. I was someone he had started to trust. But trust is a fragile thing. And the more he spoke, the more I realized how deep his loneliness went. It was heartbreaking. And in that moment, as uncomfortable and unexpected as the situation was, I knew I had a choice. I could step back, keep it surface level, and pretend none of it happened, or I could really be there for him in a way he desperately needed. And so, I stayed. We talked. 4 hours. And no, it wasn't inappropriate. But it was intimate, in the emotional sense. A real connection. The kind that's rare and raw and honest. And as the night wore on, I couldn't help but wonder, was I doing the right thing? Was this what family was supposed to feel like? What happened after that night changed everything. The lines between roles started to blur. The bond between us grew stronger, but also more complicated. And that's when things really started to spiral in ways I didn't expect. Because as it turns out, secrets don't stay hidden for long in a house where the walls are thin, and not everyone was as understanding as I was. But I'll get to that. What happened next? That's where this story really begins. Jamie started spending more time around me after that night. At first, it was small things, offering to help with dinner, asking if I wanted company while folding laundry, or just sitting in the living room while I watched one of my shows. It felt subtle, but I noticed it. And honestly, part of me felt relieved. I thought maybe this meant he was opening up, starting to feel more comfortable in the house, with me, with everything. I didn't want to question it too much, because for the first time in a long while, it felt like we were actually forming some kind of bond. But then came the looks. You know the kind, too long to be casual, but not quite bold enough to be obvious. I'd catch him staring when he thought I wasn't paying attention. He'd smile in a way that made me pause, not because it was wrong, but because it was different. There was a warmth in it, but also confusion, like he didn't know what he was feeling either. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel something. Not the same kind of confusion, but more like a mix of concern and caution. I kept telling myself he was just looking for comfort, maybe seeing me as someone safe to lean on. His dad, Greg, didn't notice anything. He was always working late, buried in his phone or his laptop even when he was home. Jamie and Greg never really had deep conversations, and I think that's part of what made things between Jamie and me grow so fast. He needed someone to talk to, and I happened to be the only one really paying attention. That can be dangerous, not in the way people might jump to, but emotionally. Because when someone finally listens to you, it can feel like more than just kindness. It can feel like rescue. I started asking myself questions I didn't like. Was I encouraging this without meaning to? Was I being too soft? Too available? But I kept brushing the thoughts away because nothing had actually crossed a line. We were just talking, just spending time together, just trying to understand each other in a house that always felt a little too quiet. But even in that quiet, tension started building, layer by layer, in ways I couldn't fully explain. One afternoon, I walked into the living room and found Jamie holding a framed photo. It was one of Greg and me from our wedding. Jamie looked at it for a while before setting it down without saying anything. I didn't press him on it, but I felt something shift. He was starting to ask questions without words. And I could feel the weight of them pressing against the silence between us. Then, there were the late-night talks. They became more frequent. He'd knock on my door around midnight, saying he couldn't sleep, and we'd sit in the kitchen, just talking. Sometimes about school, sometimes about how weird and messy life had become. But sometimes, the conversation would hang too long in the air, like there was something he wanted to say but kept pulling back. I began to wonder how others would see this, if anyone walked in on one of those quiet moments. It didn't look wrong. But it didn't look normal either. And I started to fear that the feelings Jamie was having might be growing into something neither of us was ready to confront. And then one night, I caught Greg staring at us through the hallway, just watching. He didn't say a word. He turned and walked away like he hadn't seen anything. But I saw the expression on his face, and that was the first time I realized that the story I thought I was controlling might have already slipped out of my hands. That was the night everything started to unravel. After that night when I saw Greg watching us from the hallway, something changed in the house. The air felt heavier, like everyone was walking around with questions they were too afraid to ask. Greg didn't bring it up, not directly, but he started acting different. He became distant, even more buried in work, and started sleeping on the couch more often, claiming he was just too tired to make it to bed. But I knew better. He was pulling away from me, and I couldn't tell if it was guilt, suspicion, or both. Jamie picked up on it too. He started asking if his dad was okay, if we were fighting. I didn't know how to answer him without lying or telling him too much. The truth was, I didn't know where Greg's head was at. He'd barely look at me some days, and when he did, there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before, doubt. Maybe even fear. And that's when I started to question everything. Was he suspecting something that wasn't really there? Or did he know something I didn't? The strange thing is, the more Greg drifted, the more Jamie leaned in. It was like we had traded places in the family dynamic, Greg fading into the background, and Jamie stepping into the space he left behind. I tried to keep a healthy distance, but Jamie made that hard. He was always present, always finding ways to be near me. He'd help with chores he never cared about before. He started cooking, sometimes even waiting up for me if I came home late from errands. At one point, I found a note he left on the kitchen counter, just a simple thank you, for listening, for being there, for not making him feel alone. It broke my heart a little. Because he meant it. And I could see he was trying to turn that gratitude into something deeper, something I wasn't ready to name out loud. To make things even more tangled, I started getting weird messages on social media. Anonymous accounts, nothing threatening, but they hinted at something. "Does your husband know what goes on at home?" one said. Another was just a photo of Jamie and me in the backyard, taken from a distance. That one sent chills down my spine. Someone was watching us. Someone was trying to stir something up. I didn't know who or why, but it meant this wasn't just about feelings anymore. Someone wanted to make this a problem. And suddenly, I wasn't just trying to manage emotions, I was trying to protect a secret I didn't fully understand yet. I couldn't sleep that night. The photo kept replaying in my head of Jamie and me in the yard, laughing over something silly, frozen in time like a snapshot of guilt. But I knew we hadn't done anything wrong. Not really. Still, the fact that someone was watching us, maybe even following us, turned everything from complicated to dangerous. I deleted the message but took a screenshot just in case. I didn't tell Greg. I couldn't. Not yet. The next few days felt like walking on glass. Greg barely said a word to me. He'd glance at Jamie with this unreadable look, like he was piecing something together but didn't want to admit it. Jamie, on the other hand, was acting normal, too normal. He kept trying to draw me into conversations, joking more, touching my arm lightly when he passed by. It felt innocent on the surface, but there was something charged underneath. Something we both felt but didn't talk about. And then the envelope showed up. It was slipped under the front door one afternoon. No return address. Inside were printed photos, more of them. One was from the kitchen, where Jamie and I had stayed up late talking. Another was from the night he fell asleep on the couch with his head near my lap. None of them showed anything inappropriate, but the way they were framed, they told a different story. A story someone clearly wanted Greg to believe. I didn't know who was behind it, maybe a neighbor, maybe someone from Jamie's school. But whoever it was, they wanted to blow up our lives. That night, Greg came home early. He had the envelope in his hand. He didn't say a word. He just set it on the table, looked me dead in the eyes, and asked, "Is there something you need to tell me?" Jamie walked into the room just then, holding a glass of water, pausing in the doorway like he knew something was about to happen. Everything hung in the air of years of silence, confusion, suspicion, and trust, about to crash all at once. The silence in the room felt like it could shatter glass. Greg's eyes didn't move from mine. He wasn't angry, at least not in the way I expected. It was worse. He looked hurt. Like he had already decided what the photos meant. Jamie stood frozen in the doorway, glass of water trembling slightly in his hand. I didn't know who to speak to first. My heart was racing, but my voice wouldn't come. Before I could say anything, Greg dropped another bomb. "I got a call today," he said quietly, still staring at me. "From Jamie's school." That caught both of us off guard. Jamie's expression shifted instantly, from nervous to something close to panic. "They said someone's been asking questions. About what goes on at home. About you. And Jamie." Now I was the one frozen. This wasn't just someone snooping around our house anymore. Whoever was behind the photos had taken it further, reaching into Jamie's world, trying to dig up something. Or create it. And I could see the fear in Jamie's face. This wasn't just about us now. It was about exposure. Reputation. Consequences. Greg finally turned to Jamie, his voice firmer now. "Is there something you want to tell me?" Jamie looked like he might speak, but he didn't. Instead, he just shook his head slightly, almost like he was afraid of what would come out if he opened his mouth. And then, just when I thought we were at our breaking point, the doorbell rang. We all jumped. No one moved at first. Greg finally walked over and opened it, and standing there was a woman none of us recognized. She looked calm. Confident. Holding an envelope in her hand. "I think you should see this," she said, her eyes flicking to Jamie, then to me. Jamie's face went pale. He whispered something under his breath that only I could hear. "Oh no. It's her." Greg stepped aside, letting the woman into the house. She walked in like she had every right to be there, calm but with a look that said she wasn't here to play games. She handed the envelope straight to him, then turned to Jamie with an unsettling smile. "I told you this wouldn't go away," she said softly, almost like she pitied him. I finally found my voice. "Who are you?" Jamie exhaled, defeated. "She's my ex. From before we moved here." Greg ripped open the envelope. Inside were screenshots, text messages. Some between Jamie and the girl, and others that had clearly been taken out of context. One had Jamie venting late at night, saying he was finally connecting with someone who cares, and another where he mentioned how things feel better with her in the house. They weren't romantic. They weren't confessions. But strung together, they painted a dangerous picture. "She's been trying to ruin my life since I ended things," Jamie said, now fully shaken. "She knew I was getting better, and she hated it." The girl shrugged. "I told him I'd make people see the truth. Or at least what they'd believe." Greg stared at the papers, then at me. And I saw it, something break. Not trust. But the weight of everything that had built up. The suspicion, the silence, the doubt. "I believe you," he said finally, voice low. "Both of you." And just as I started to breathe again, the girl laughed and pulled out her phone. "You might want to check your messages," she said to me, then walked out. A second later, my phone buzzed. One new video. From inside the house. And I wasn't in it. But Jamie was. And so was Greg. I opened the video with shaky hands, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the sound playing. The footage was from our living room, clearly taken with a hidden camera, grainy but clear enough to see. Jamie was on the couch, pacing, ranting to someone off-screen. Then Greg appeared. They were arguing. About me. Jamie's voice cracked as he said, "You never cared what she did for me. You're just mad because I trust her more than you." Greg fired back, "She's not your therapist, Jamie. She's your stepmother." The video stopped abruptly. No context, no ending. Just another attempt to twist things. But this time, it wasn't enough. It only proved what we already knew: someone wanted to cause damage, and they didn't care who got caught in the crossfire. Greg deleted the video, looked at Jamie, then me. No more questions. No more hesitation. Just a long breath and the decision to move forward, not backward. The girl never came back. We reported her to the school and the authorities. Turns out, this wasn't her first time stirring chaos like this. It didn't undo the tension, but it cleared the air. Things didn't magically go back to normal after that. But with time, the house felt lighter again. Jamie started therapy, real therapy this time. Greg and I had hard conversations. We all did. And while the boundaries needed to be rebuilt, so did the trust. Sometimes families are born. Sometimes they're built through fire. But either way, what matters is how you choose to hold them together, especially when it feels like they might fall apart. And that was our story. 3.